This week, the NTSB warns pilots on cockpit weather displays. The Pilot's Bill of Rights meets opposition in Congress. The NTSB's GA Safety Forum has just concluded, and the super-secret X-37B is back on Earth after a record-setting mission in space. I'm Ashley Hale. Welcome to Airborne on Aero TV. The NTSB on Tuesday issued a safety alert to warn pilots who use in-cockpit FIS-B and Satellite Weather display systems that the NEXRAD age indicator can be misleading. The actual NEXRAD data can be as much as 20 minutes older than the age indication on the display in the cockpit. If misinterpreted, this difference in time can present potentially serious safety hazards to aircraft operating in the vicinity of fast-moving and quickly developing weather systems. NEXRAD mosaic imagery depicts weather conditions from multiple ground radar sites. The NEXRAD age indicator on the cockpit display indicates the time that the mosaic image was created, not the time of the actual weather conditions. The NEXRAD image is always older than the actual weather conditions. The NTSB has cited 2 fatal weather-related aircraft accidents in which NEXRAD images were displayed to the pilot that were presented as 1 minute old on the age indicator, but contained information that was up to 5 to 8 minutes behind the real-time conditions. The board said in the safety alert that, quote, the in-cockpit NEXRAD display depicts where the weather was, not where the weather is, end quote. The safety alert also reminds pilots of the importance of obtaining a thorough pre-flight weather briefing. Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe first introduced his Pilot's Bill of Rights, which would limit the authority of the FAA in some proceedings it takes against pilots in 2011. He wrote the legislation to address what he says is the ability of the agency to pull a pilot's airman privileges on a whim. The bill would give pilots access to evidence used by the FAA to revoke pilot certificates and provide an appeals process should their certificates be lifted. Late last week, Senator Inhofe asked for unanimous consent from the Senate to consider the bill. While he admitted in a floor speech that for many in the Senate the legislation might have little meaning, he added, quote, it means a lot to the 400,000 members of the AOPA and to the 175,000 general aviation pilots with the EAA, who know that with the whim of just one bureaucrat, they could just lose their license, end quote. Apparently, the senator was right when it came to his colleagues. The bill had little meaning to them. The Hill reports that the move was blocked by Senators Jay Rockefeller and Kay Bailey Hutchinson, the chair and ranking minority member of the Senate Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction over the FAA. Rockefeller said, quote, this bill would stand the FAA's enforcement structure on its head, and as a result, I object. The NTSB has just concluded its General Aviation Safety Forum, titled Climbing to the Next Level, earlier this week. The forum was held in Washington, D.C. at the NTSB's headquarters this past Tuesday and Wednesday. The goals of the forum were 1. To raise awareness of the GA accident rate and associated recurring safety issue areas. 2. To promote and facilitate dialogue around these issues. And 3. To determine how to effectively address these issues to improve the safety of GA operations for the future. The need for such a forum was highlighted by statistics showing that over the past 10 years, GA has experienced an average of 1,500 accidents annually, or about 4 accidents every day. Among the topics discussed were pilot training and performance, pilot access to and use of weather-related information, aircraft design, certification, and maintenance, new technologies and practices which may help improve GA safety. The forum was free of charge and open to the public, but if you could not attend, the good news is the forum is available as a webcast for viewing on your computer at your convenience. The forum will be archived on the NTSB website, www.ntsb.gov, for 90 days. The FlyNano electric prototype airplane made its first flight last week. The not much bigger than a breadbox, single-place, open-cockpit floatplane was unveiled at the Aero 2011 trade fair in Friedrichshafen, Germany. It was envisioned to be primarily powered with an internal combustion engine, but with advances in the development of electric motors and batteries, the company says the production version of the sport flyer will primarily be equipped with electric power plants. On its blog, FlyNano says that the new engine, propeller, controller, and batteries form a package that is substantially stronger than the earlier model. They say they were unable to get sufficient speed from the reciprocating engine to achieve takeoff speeds during high-speed taxi tests, but that the electric drivetrain overcomes that issue. FlyNano's goal is to start production this year and to deliver the first 35 planes, already sold in advance, by the end of 2013. The international patent is currently pending to protect the configuration. And like the iPod Nano, the FlyNano is itsy-bitsy, with room for only one person, no passengers, and no cargo, but it sure looks like fun to fly. The U.S. Air Force's Mini-Me space shuttle, the X-37B, landed successfully at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California early Saturday morning, ending a 469-day experimental test mission. The X-37B, also known as the Orbital Test Vehicle No. 2, was launched into space back on March 5, 2011. Boeing Phantom Works built two of the robotic space planes as test vehicles, and they look like miniature versions of NASA's now retired Space Shuttle orbiters, with a similar shape and a payload bay for cargo and experiments. They are 29 feet long compared to the shuttle's 122-foot length, and they have a wingspan of 15 feet compared to the shuttle's wingspan of 78 feet. It also has a cargo bay about the size of the bed of a pickup truck. The military, which took over the program from NASA, says it's using them to learn how to quickly and inexpensively refurbish reusable spaceships for flight. The X-37Bs also serve as orbital test beds for instruments that could be incorporated into future satellites. It's not known if OTV-2 carried anything in its cargo bay on this mission. No sooner had OTV-2 touched down than the Air Force announced a third mission is planned for later this year. OTV-1 will fly that mission, and of course, there has been no comment about the mission's objectives. The original OTV debuted in 2010 and completed a 224-day orbital mission. Meanwhile, China has placed its first woman in space. A three-person crew, including 33-year-old Air Force Major Liu Yang, blasted off Saturday evening aboard a Shenzhou 9 spacecraft from the Jiuquan Launch Center in the northern Gobi Desert. The primary mission objective is to accomplish China's first manned space docking with another orbiting vehicle. China has embarked on an ambitious plan to develop its own space station, which it hopes to have completed in 2020. That's about the same time the ISS is expected to be retired. While China insists that its space program is intended only for peaceful civilian purposes, U.S. officials and others say that there is a lack of transparency to the Chinese program. Analysts have said that there are apparently military applications of the technologies being developed by the Chinese space program. Air Force officials are examining the special flight suits worn by F22 Raptor pilots as a contributory factor in the unexplained episodes of pilot sickness. Almost 24 incidents of pilots reporting hypoxia-type conditions have led to the one-time grounding of the F-22 fleet. Most recently, pilots were ordered to remain close enough to potential landing sites to allow emergency returns if symptoms arose. Now these hypoxia symptoms have reportedly been replicated in a simulator, and officials are examining what's called the Suits Combat Edge, a vest-like structure which is used to combat extreme G-forces. Investigators have found that it could hamper breathing when the pilot experiences conditions which can also collapse air sacs in the lungs. Still, the flight suits would not account for why some mechanics have even complained of hypoxia-like symptoms while working on the airplane on the ground. The FAA and NASA have signed an historic agreement to coordinate standards for commercial space travel. Tom Patton has that story.
The Memorandum of Understanding signed by the two agencies Monday sets standards for the transportation of government and non-government astronauts to and from low Earth orbit and to the ISS. The two agencies agreed to collaborate to develop a stable framework for the U.S. space industry, avoid conflicting requirements and multiple sets of standards, and promote both public and crew safety. It also establishes policy for operational missions to the space station. Commercial providers will be required to obtain a license from the FAA for public safety. Crew safety and mission assurance will be NASA's responsibility. That way, both agencies incorporate experience and lessons learned as progress is made. NASA's Commercial Crew Program is charged with developing a U.S. commercial crew space capability with the goal of achieving safe, reliable, and cost-effective access to and from low Earth orbit and the ISS. The policy established in the MOU clarifies the regulatory environment for operational missions to the orbiting laboratory for potential commercial providers. It also ensures the two agencies will have compatible processes for ensuring public safety. The agreement also addresses proper protocols for implementation, financial obligations, liability, free exchange of data and information, and other administrative obligations between the FAA and NASA. The FAA is responsible for regulating and licensing all private U.S. companies and individuals involved in commercial space transportation. For Airborne, I'm Tom Patton.
You're watching Airborne. More in a moment.
Since its inception, Redbird Flight Simulations has been dedicated to developing new training technologies and processes in an ongoing effort to make aviation safer, more affordable, and more accessible.
We're using technology to make this kind of training accessible to all flight schools of all sizes and all budgets, and to democratize flying in general, because we make this kind of training more accessible to people.
For more information about Redbird Flight Simulations, as well as Redbird's new Skyport, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com or www.redbirdskyport.com.